Hello IB students, welcome to this brief video on some of the common errors that I observed in your last DYRT tests for stamped. I wanted to go over these with you and have you kind of type them into the bottom of your second DYRT prep sheet, so that you could use them on Thursday's DYRT test. I should be back in school by then for sure. So please kind of follow along, add these notes to the bottom of your DYRT prep sheet as I go over them. One of the first common errors I saw is your thesis statements should use the keywords from the prompt or that guiding question that's at the bottom of the passage. So for example, what does this passage tell us about representation and or perspective? Right, your response should look something like one of these. Kendi and Reynolds use diction, metaphor, and syntax to show readers that a person's perspective can be easily manipulated, right? Repeating the key word to let me know you're focusing on perspective. Or another thesis statement you could have written is the authors use those devices to show readers that one's representation is important both privately and publicly. Right? Either one of those would have been fine. The idea is that whatever you write in your thesis statement should directly connect to that guiding question that's provided at the bottom of your passage. Next thing, your lead-ins to quotes should sound natural and avoid those phrases like we talked about before, right? The author says or the author writes. Use those dynamic lead-ins that we practiced last semester. If you need a refresher on what those look like, if you go to the modules page on our Canvas page, all of our resources from first semester are located there, and you should be able to find one on dynamic lead-ins. Don't discuss the use of literary devices in a vacuum, right? You're not just talking about it for the sake of talking about it. You should always be able to link them to how it helps the author get their message across to their reader, or helps them accomplish their goal of conveying that universal and practical lesson about one of those line of inquiry topics. 4A and 4B are kind of related to each other, right? You can't discuss repetition without using at least two sentences that use the word or use the phrase that's being repeated, right? So don't just say like, the author repeats this, like show us. And then making sure that you can differentiate between repetition and parallel structure. If I had these two sentences that were one right after the other, before bed, I brush my teeth. Before breakfast, I do yoga. This would not be repetition, right? Even though the word before is repeated, what this actually is parallel structure, right? You've got the, dependent phrase, before bed, comma, and then your independent clause afterwards, or your independent sentence, I brush my teeth. Then the same structure to the sentence follows in before breakfast, comma, I do yoga. Right, so just making sure that if you're going to discuss Reynolds' use of this type of structure, this would be parallel structure, not repetition. They're really similar, but knowing the difference between the two and articulating the correct one is important for your analysis. I think this is my last one too. But the number 5, you can't discuss diction without giving the reader the whole sentence to look at first. I get it, right? It's a timed writing, but you need to write out the whole sentence first and then discuss the importance of the particular words, right? How they impact the reader, or they have some other kind of effect. As a reminder, you've got those 3 steps to analysis where we covered that. And I gave you that handout last semester, but it's also available in the resource module on Canvas. I don't remember if I printed more copies and I put them in the folder that's on the back shelf at the back of the room, but if I didn't, I'll print more and I'll have them there for you before Thursday's exam, your DYRT test. Having that sheet out while you do your DYRT test is not a bad idea. Right, it covers all 3 steps that you should be using when you analyze any of those literary devices we talked about: diction, imagery, details, language, or syntax. Just some quick clarifications, and these are not questions that you had to answer, but these are ones that I wanted to make sure that I kind of addressed. right? The difference between assimilationists and anti-racists, and who would you list as an example, right? Assimilationists only like you if you act like them, but an anti-racist likes you for who you are and doesn't consider race a factor in whether or not, excuse me, whether or not they like you. Thomas Jefferson was not an assimilationist. He was a segregationist. He literally tried to send African Americans back to Africa to keep them separate from white Americans. Phyllis Wheatley is an example of assimilationist. The question was like, who is she and how is her story related to the idea of uplift suasion, and conversely, like assimilationist. Her link to uplift suasion, is that white men used her as an example or an argument for the pursuit of assimilationist ideas. In other words, they basically said, if we can teach black people to act like white people, then white people will be able to embrace them. That is a deeply racist idea. And unfortunately, lots of black people, including Phyllis Wheatley herself, fell for that promise of acceptance at the expense of acting like their authentic selves. Wheatley, unfortunately, continued to try and gain acceptance from white people until the day she died. Right? Again, that mindset that there was somehow something wrong with her and somehow white people were the gold standard to live up to, that's assimilationist, right? And uplift suasion was that idea that, if you just acted white enough, then white people would accept you, right? Again, deeply racist idea. The last one, Thomas Jefferson, a lot of people in your DYRT prep sheets had weird kind of conflicting things about him. And he was kind of a weird and conflicted guy. He would say one thing and then do another. But given all of the kind of actions that he committed, etc., like how would Kendi kind of categorize him, right? First of all, since he tried to ship slaves back to Africa and said he wanted to quote unquote free them, but then he kept his own slaves, several of which were his own children, he clearly didn't see them as capable of assimilating, right? He didn't think that they could fit into society, so he actively tries to push them away and treats them like a problem. That would put him like solidly in the grounds of a segregationist. And, you can argue back and forth like, well, there's the things he did in his private life, and then there's the policies that he put in place, and I'm not arguing and saying that that's not true. Many of the times, somewhat stereotypical politician move, right? He would say one thing and then do something completely different. Jefferson is no exception here. However, like these seem like very, I don't know, these are two things that he did that obviously make a solid case for putting him in the category of a segregationist, right? He did not think that Africans and whites could live together in America. So he literally tried to send them back. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about either anything I mentioned in this or in general, please just send me an email. I'll do my best to check it like I normally do. For those of you who missed the first DYRT test, I sent you an email about makeup days, but I'm not sure if I can be there on Tuesday. I'll send you an update as soon as I possibly can about when your makeup day will be. Just kind of work with me as I get over this annoying illness. Thank you for watching, and please continue reading Stamped and working on your second DYRT prep sheet.